Well, today is Founders Day. On Founders Day, we acknowledge the society itself, what has been created here, our joining together to pursue this program, this mission, and we celebrate what ethical culture is and what its aspirations are for the future. So here's my question. Why do we come here the way we do? Why here and not somewhere else? Well, we will have a big, nice luncheon this afternoon to honor a terrific member, but we generally come every week or nearly every week. Really, there must be something here that brought us, you and me, together here. Some of us have been coming here for years, and some have discovered the society more recently. And I hope to explore this and try to understand who we are, what we have, and what ethical culture gives us. There are all kinds of events, activities, happenings, all competing for our attention on Sunday mornings. There are the Sunday morning talk shows, there's NPR. Are we a political discussion club? Not really. Although we do talk about current events a lot. There are TED Talks and adult education programs out there. And are we a lecture series? It might look like that from the outside, but that doesn't quite get us either. We're standing in the shadow of some powerfully attractive alternatives. We are small, they are big. Is it that we're unique? Well, I think so. Other communities and congregations make big promises. Some offer special connections with the infinite. Some offer direct answers to life's eternal questions. Some offer social and political connections. Some offer traditions with roots in a deep past. Does ethical culture offer answers to the big questions that have troubled and confounded people for millennia? So what is its unique contribution? Well, ethical culture is an integral part of the long tradition of humanism, and humanism goes back to the earliest days of written philosophy. It has roots in the deep past. Humanism says in part that we have a hand in our own destiny, that we have agency and we're responsible for the world that we create. We don't try to rely on the intercession of supernatural power, nor do we ask for it with prayers. Humanism says that we can make this a better world if we choose to do so. It is in large part up to us. Well, we celebrate Founders Day because ethical culture had a founder, a young man, just 25 years of age. What a novel and unique idea for its time. The idea was that there could be a religion that didn't really need gods at all, that it was sufficient to have as its motive and its goal a pursuit of the moral life, to encourage the pursuit of and an aspiration towards an ethical way of being. We still speak respectfully of Felix Adler, the founder, some 90 years after his death. But we don't deify him or worship him, of course, but he does remain a touchstone, and we quote him a lot. He left a lot of real good quotable expressions. We celebrate Founders Day somewhere around May 15, since the inaugural platform, which announced the launching of the new community, was given on that day, May 15, 1876, nearly 150 years ago. It was in a rented hall on 42nd Street near Broadway. It wasn't called Times Square then. 100 people were invited. Most of them were members of Temple Emmanuel, where his father was then chief rabbi. Adler had been expected to go into the rabbinate himself, but after studying at the great German universities and being exposed to modern philosophy, to Eastern philosophy, to the labor movement, which was turbulent at the time, to scientific advances and free thought arguments. We came back to New York with a lot of new ideas. In his trial sermon at Temple Emmanuel, he spoke of a Judaism of the future, and that Judaism welcomed all people and would be centered on the practice of the ethical life and doing good works. Never mentioned God at all. Well, that was a big disappointment to the temple board, and he didn't get the job. But many of his listeners were impressed. They encouraged him to pursue the dream, and he struck out on his own. By the fall of 1876, the group formally organized into the New York Society for Ethical Culture. Now, Adler was said to be a riveting speaker, and his lectures were typically attended by hundreds of people at a time. He spoke every week on topics of life, philosophy, and ethical relationships. And he called for a new philosophy and a new religion of morality, whose God was the good, whose church was the whole universe and heaven here on earth and not in the clouds. It was he who first said, I spell God with two O's. Yes, I believe in God, but I spell it with two O's. That's one of his great quotes. Well, Darwin had recently published his groundbreaking book in 1859, and Adler was deeply moved by discoveries in science that depicted the world that was much grander than anything imagined in the traditional faiths. Still, the interconnection, the interdependence of all life out of an immense universe, the interrelationship of all humanity, that in itself, as he said, evoked in him a religious response, a response of awe and wonder. Well, as a result, the deep relation between one person and others in this interconnected web of existence aroused in him a sense of duty to improve society, and he inspired others to join him in important and impressive projects of community service that they initiated at that time. So this time, the 1870s, 1880s, was sometimes referred to as the age of reform in New York City. We sometimes fail to remember how awful life was in New York City at that time. It was intensely in need of reform. In the 1870s, New York City was crowded, dirty, dangerous. Sewage flowed in the streets. People died of typhoid, typhus, and cholera. And malnutrition diseases were rampant, things we don't even think of or hear of anymore. Who ever heard of anyone with pellagra, a vitamin B deficiency disease, which was rampant? Beriberi, scurvy, rickets, these nutritional diseases. Unless they were rich, children didn't go to school. They went to work. Gangs ruled sections of the city, and the political system was corrupt on a vast scale under the iron grip of Tammany Hall. There was powerful aspiration to do something to alleviate the harsh and cruel existence in which many people were mired. So under Adler, the Ethical Society took many very ambitious and far-reaching reform projects, such as the first professional visiting nurse service to serve the poor that was not rooted in missionary work, the first free secular kindergarten, the free workingmen's school for the children of working people, tenement reform laws, settlement house movement, which aided the streams of immigrants who poured in from Europe, and social justice, participating with others in the formation of groups like the NAACP and the ACLU. A child study group led to promoting laws against child labor. A summer camp for handicapped children evolved into Blythedale Hospital, which is today, still today, the largest private children's hospital in New York. Many of these projects resulted in organizations that took on their own independent existence, and this list goes on. Ethical culture expanded in the following decade as Adler did these lecture tours around the country. People in other cities heard him and were moved by his suggestions and found inspiration in his words. And they organized local societies in Chicago and St. Louis and Philadelphia, all within the 1880s. Adler himself selected and trained all the leaders that he appointed to go out and serve in each of these new societies. And it's interesting how they came from diverse backgrounds. William Salter, who went to the New Chicago Society, originally came from a congregational church background. S. Burns Weston, who went to serve in the Philadelphia Society, started off as a Unitarian minister from Harvard Divinity School. Walter Sheldon, the first leader at the St. Louis Society, had an evangelical background. And Stanton Coit, who was an Englishman, actually started the first settlement house in the United States. The Madison House was originally Episcopalian. There were three settlement houses that the Ethical Society started in New York: the Madison House, University House, and Hudson Guild. And then another one was started in Philadelphia. Well, Stanton Coit went on to lead a liberal community back in London that joined the ethical movement. So the founding leaders didn't emerge really from any single tradition, and they did not seek to pattern this new movement on anything that really existed at the time. They sought to create an entirely new, modern, rational community. There was, from the earliest days, one particular slogan that meant to encapsulate this important theme of Ethical Culture Project: deed before creed. So we say that to this day. This phrase highlights the standard by which the doing impacts the world more than dogma and doctrine. It also sought to encourage participation by people of different backgrounds. The many contradictory theologies around the world succeeded only in creating divisions among people, setting them against each other. But deeds speak louder, and deeds serve people's needs. On the other hand, you'll notice that the expression doesn't really say that all creed is abolished. It sets a priority. It says deed before creed. Creed is still kind of in the formula, right? Some kind of policy or philosophy, a guiding ethic, is still important. As Adler once said, while a creed without deeds will be empty and useless, deeds without creed will be without focus, meaning, or direction. So clearly, a theory, a purpose, a guiding principle is important. But that philosophy must be derived from real life experience, one that's connected to real needs, one that's nurtured by deeds. Not something wholly unconnected with the way we live, both deed and creed. So what is ethical culture's creed? Social reform was an important part of ethical culture from its beginning. But ethical culture was not just a social service movement per se. To Adler, social service was more than a charitable act. To Adler, we are engaged in a project of elevating the human race to fulfill its highest and best potentials, its highest aspirations. Humanity, to him, was on a great trajectory towards moral perfection, as he explained. And what is our duty on this journey? We are to ethicize our world, and that word ethicize is an active verb. We're to ethicize our families, our communities, our workplace, and our nation. We are to undertake the world's moral improvement and to harmonize it so as to bring an end to cruelty, injustice, inequality, and prejudice. And in so doing, we will improve and elevate our own moral fiber. We're to enhance our own capacity for understanding and strive for our own moral perfection. For Adler, social service is a spiritual practice. And this brings us to another of ethical culture's expressions that you all know that are at the core of ethical culture's culture. Act so as to elicit the best in others and thereby elicit the best in yourself. The best illustration of this might be the story of John Lovejoy Elliott, who, of course, as you know, is another one of early ethical culture leaders and an enduring part of the legacy of ethical culture. If ethical culture ever had a saint, it would be John Lovejoy Elliott. Now, he was never martyred, luckily, but his life was remarkable and exemplary. And every year, it's been the tradition to award an annual Elliott Black Award given by the national organization, the AEU, to some courageous nominee who helped advance social justice. And it was named after Elliott and Algernon Black, a great leader from the mid-20th century. John Lovejoy Elliott was inspired by a lecture that he heard given by Adler when he was a student at Cornell. And he joined the movement. In the 1890s, late 1890s, when Elliott was just 26 years old, he started a settlement house of his own in Chelsea section of Manhattan called Hudson Guild, which is still operating to this day. Back then, Chelsea was the tough inner city. Elliott moved into a rooming house right in the neighborhood and lived amid the people that he ministered to. He helped them start language and literacy classes, employment assistance, women's support groups, teen activities, and he organized a vocational printing school. He encouraged the tough youngsters of the neighborhood gangs, the hurly-burly gangs was what was there, and got them to participate to learn a trade. He'd even visit them in jail when that's where they were, helping them arrange for bail or for release, or encouraging them to advance themselves. In undertaking so ambitious a project, you have to have faith in the people you serve, faith in their inherent worth, in their potential. And Elliott reached out to them with extraordinary energy and moxie. By respecting their needs, being optimistic to their prospects, and remaining a positive presence, he was able to bring out the best to so many people. He didn't tell people what was best for them. To bring out the best in others means to encourage the unique qualities inherent in that person. That is to say, respecting who the other person really is, and not simply project your own values on them. People responded to Elliott's encouragement, to his faith in them, in order to realize their own inner strength and capacity for growth, for emergence out of the slums and out of the culture of chaos and violence. So the expression continues to say, and thereby bring out the best in yourself. Well, can you be your best if you do not reach out and help another? By reaching out, don't you stretch yourself, make yourself more engaged, more connected, more purposeful, more actualized? What wouldn't that be your best self? That growth can't be accomplished without the deed. It's the doing that makes it all the better. Another formulation of this expression goes this way: and you will thereby challenge and bring to life the hidden best in yourself. Elliott showed a belief in the inner worth of those gang members in Chelsea who were landing in jail. He reached out to everyone, including both the meanest and the saintliest, acting with faith in their capacities for growth. Adler would say that people are not to be treated as means for some end or as objects to be used. Every individual has fundamental, intrinsic, a priori worth. And worth is not something that someone needs to earn or prove by his or her good deeds. From the innocent child to the convicted prisoner condemned because of some awful heinous acts, everyone has worth, even when one might not have tremendous value to society. Yet we attribute worth to a person because he or she is human. This is something that we bring to it, no matter how unlikely or ungrateful one may be. This is our fundamental faith. The rich legacy of ethical culture is written by the different societies that comprise the ethical community. Our society here in Long Island has made its own contribution that is as rich as that of any other society. Organized in 1950, you're counting, right? 74 years, along with several others that were organized in the post-World War II suburban boom, it would quickly grew large enough to build its own meeting house here in Garden City. The Long Island Society and its members engaged in so many important, relevant, and impactful activities in so many areas. Looking back, it's simply stunning. Active in areas such as housing discrimination, promoting racial desegregation, peace, banning the bomb was a big movement here, opposing the banning of books in different generations. 75 years, you span a few different movements. Draft counseling, supporting conscientious objectors, supporting women's rights, abortion rights, voting rights, human rights, environmental stewardship and gun regulation, youth programs, and ethical friends of children. Supporting women in re-entry and food drives for nutrition assistance, as well as offering a meeting place for the community on Long Island and an open and welcoming caring committee for those who wish to join. Ethical culture stands for those fundamental values which make for a decent society, for human dignity, for justice, for equality, for compassion, for reason, for the open mind, and for the nobility of the human spirit. For these eternal values must be supported in every generation. Today, democratic values are under attack, and in every generation, they're challenged and need support. That is why the ethical culture movement will continue. People will always rise to defend these fundamental values, and the ethical society will be here to rally them, welcome them, and give them a home. For nearly 75 years, this society has offered its response to Felix Adler's challenge and has followed the path of ethical action and of building a caring community of people who share these goals. This is a project to which one can devote oneself. It's to build a life of meaning, a life of service, and a life of reverence. Reverence to life, to justice, and to the power of love. This society will go on to serve new generations concerned with the important matters that will emerge in the years to come. As Margaret Mead famously wrote once, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." Yep, together we can change the world. Okay.